Participating in the first Pride was incredibly exciting. It had never been done before, but it was also quite scary. There was the fear of police harassment and the fear of homophobic violence. But in the end, that march went ahead and we made history. I'm Peter Tatchell. I came out and began campaigning for LGBT+ rights at the age of 17 in 1969. And I'm one of about 30 or 40 people who helped organise Britain's first ever Pride Parade, which took place in London in July 1972. In the early 1970s, I was involved in both the Gay Liberation Front and the National Union of Students Gay Rights Campaign. There were hundreds of young LGBT+ people involved in the Gay Liberation Front. So youth rights was a very important part of GLF's agenda. In particular, but not exclusively, challenging the unequal age of consent. We didn't know how the police would react, because at the time, still lots of aspects of gay male life were criminalised. So we were fearful of violent attacks. That first Pride March was very heavily policed, with almost an officer for every marcher. But we were not deterred. Public reactions as we marched through the street were very split. About a third of people on the pavement were overtly hostile. They shouted abuse, some even threw cans, coins, and bottles at us. And another third were actually supportive. They cheered and clapped. And that gave us the confidence to do it again the next year.
Hi, I'm Stef Dickers. I'm the Library and Archives Collection Manager here at Bishopsgate Institute. Tell you a bit about the Institute. We were opened in 1895 by the church across the road, but forgive us for that. Set up as a working people's institute where people could come and experience a bit of culture and come to a concert and come to a lecture and use a library. And the library's started off as a public library, but we're now a special collections library on various different topics: London history, radical history, the history of protest, women and feminist history, and since 2011 on LGBTQ, IA+, and alternative sexuality history. So one of the amazing things we have in the archive is a full collection of gay news, which was the major British publication catering for the community from June 1972 when it started. And we've got a collection that goes right through to the modern day in its modern incarnation, Gay Times. But this is an incredible thing because we're talking about Gay Pride in 1973. So I'm sure many people watching will know the first Gay Pride was in 1972. But in 1973, it was a bit of a flop. The fact it only makes page 3 in the Gay Times is an indication of how unsuccessful it was. But we have a report here about the march titled "More a Whimper Than a Bang," which gives you a bit of an indication what went on. Basically, there was a bit of confusion. It was organised by West London Gay Liberation Front, and there was a bit of confusion about where the actual march should start. So they advertised it publicly before the march as starting at Trafalgar Square, but then put stickers up all over London saying to start at the Embankment. So you'd ended up with these small groups, one in Trafalgar Square, one in the Embankment. So yeah, it was a bit of a flop from the word go. But when everybody actually got together, it actually was quite a good success. And the article talks about actually when everything got together, it was a bit better, and people started chanting and ended up in Hyde Park where they all got together. And it seems we were accosted by someone from Speaker's Corner, a religious gentleman from Speaker's Corner, but he was still put in his place when someone shouted, "But Jesus was gay." There we go. But a wonderful report on that Pride that was maybe not the most successful one ever. One of the most amazing things we have at Bishopsgate, we have a huge collection of photography recording the history of the community right back to very long ago. And one of the really amazing collections we have is a collection of a guy called Robert Workman, who was the in-house photographer for Gay News from about 1974 onwards to 1985. And his archive is an incredible document of Pride over the years. He was at every Pride with his camera, taking photographs. So you'll find incredible images down Regent Street in 1976. We have here some wonderful hair, some even more wonderful bell-bottoms on display. Every Pride you can imagine, even the one 1981 when they went to Huddersfield as well. They went to Huddersfield basically as a pub had been closed down and was receiving lots of trouble from the police, and they went up there in solidarity to have Pride in Huddersfield. And what you see this Bub's collection records a lot of London prides in London, but also you see at the sort of the 90s, we've also got records of pride where it starts to go out nationally as well. So lots of records and photographs we get sent in from local prides, whether it be in Cardiff, in Scotland, all over the place. So it's basically an archive that records the history of the Pride festivals wherever it be in the UK, and a collection that's been added to all the time. So people donate every year their photographs from Pride. But yeah, a wonderful photographic record of every Pride. So if you want to come and see what it was like to be on the march all around the UK, we're the place to come and have a look.
So here I am at the start point of the 1973 London Pride Parade, here on the embankment by the Sphinx and Needle. And then we marched onwards to Hyde Park, where we held a gay day. And here's me with the black activist Ted Brown, who has done so much over his lifetime to pioneer the rights of LGBT plus black people.
So whenever I do a tour of the collections at the Institute, the bit I always get upstaged is by the badges, because everyone loves a badge. And we have so many badges here. So I've just got out 5 trays of about 25, 30 plus we have, and they contain badges for every campaign you can imagine that the community's gone through. But also every time a badge was produced for Pride, we've got 1 or 2 examples here. I think the first one was 1976, but my favourite is most definitely 1979, because they did sort of, what should we say, a sort of a scale of quality. So you could get the cheap badge from 1979, or you could get the really posh one that glowed in the dark for 1979. So these are quite wonderful, but the badges are incredible, because obviously we have all the prides recorded here, but badges were something that you could wear to say who you were at a point. And a lot of people who have donated badges to us said, I wore this badge to say who I was. I didn't have to say who I was, but this told people who I was. And they were a big thing about identity, and when people came down to London, when they moved to London, the badges would come on, and it was a sort of solidarity thing. So I am really also delighted that badges are making a bit of comeback. So now we're getting more and more badges added to the collection as well. So it's a growing collection. So if anyone's got badges out there, there's another little tray waiting for those ones. But I could sit and look at all these all day, and yeah, whenever I do a tour, this is where the phones come out and pictures get taken.
The first prides in the early 1970s only had about 1,000 or 2,000 people. And it wasn't until 1988, with the advent of the anti-gay law, Section 28, that suddenly it grew from 15,000 to 30,000. And then it kept growing every single year, so that by the late 1990s, there were well over 100,000 people on the Pride Parade, and it took nearly 6 hours to pass a single point.
Okay, so part of the collection as well, we also have all the programmes from all the prides that have taken place over the years. And it's quite wonderful when you look through these, you see our production values have slightly gone up. So the very early prides from 72, 73, 74 didn't really produce any guides, as we've seen in 73. Probably could have done with producing a guide. But you start to see them going up. So if we have a look at 79 was the first one when they really went to town with the guides. And this was the anniversary, 10-year anniversary of Stonewall riots in 1969, and stickers and badges. But you can see, if you look, for example, at 1982, you know, it's not far off someone's printer at home being run off. But as you see, as you wonderfully look through, you see how these develop, where we're going up to Pride 1987, a lot more production values, up until now, when we've obviously got these wonderful glossy magazines we get at Pride. You
know, back then, in the early days, we had a carnival atmosphere. It was a great celebration, but we also had very strong LGBT plus human rights demands. It's really sad and disappointing the way in which so many of the big prides across the country have become so depoliticized. No championing of trans rights, no championing of the rights of LGBT asylum seekers, no championing of LGBT inclusive relationship and sex education in schools. And that is a huge pity. It's a great betrayal of what Pride was originally about. And to those who say that Pride must be a celebration, I say, why can't we have both a celebration and a protest like we did in the early days of the 1970s?
So I've just shown you a tiny bit of the collections we've got here. We've got so much stuff, but the collections are all here not as a possession of the Institute. They're here to inspire you all for you to come and enjoy, be educated, to learn, but to come away inspired by what you see. So I would recommend anyone watching this, come and pay us a visit, come in and enjoy the collections, and it's growing all the time. So people are adding to the material we've got. And unlike some other archives as well, anyone's stuff is valued. So if there's something you'd like to put in the archive from your queer history, let us know, because there's a box waiting for you. Your history is important as all these people's history. So come and be part of the archive as well as coming and enjoying it.